I think the future is more decentralized and more shared ownership.
Do you have any preference for having the US run ahead of China in AI technology?
No, I want to exactly prevent that situation where it comes to this binary. That's where open source is important.
Even North Korea? You want it to be open to North Korea?
Yeah, this technology is coming. One way or the other, North Korea will have it.
I think the AI is going to get more powerful than us, and we will no longer have any levers of control whatsoever. You're just saying that's an impossible scenario.
Yeah, next 100 years impossible.
Welcome to Doom Debates. My guest today is Dr. Himanshu Tyagi, a professor of engineering at the Indian Institute of Science and the co-founder of Sentient AI, which is an open source AI platform that also uses blockchain technology. And it has raised $85 million in funding last year, led by Peter Thiel's VC firm, Founders Fund. In this conversation, we're going to explore our respective views on AI alignment and whether open sourcing frontier AI is a good idea. Himanshu, welcome to Doom Debates.
A pleasure to be here, man.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. So I know this is kind of a PR tour for you. You know, you're getting your name out there, telling people about Sentient AI and your platform. But at the same time, you're brave enough to come on Doom Debates and let me throw a bunch of disagreements at you in addition to asking you questions. So I think you might have stumbled into the PR tour from hell.
Yeah, looking forward to it. This is the right way to find out what we are doing and what we are not.
Okay, great. Yeah, sounds great to me, man. So let's start high level. What is your vision for Sentient?
Sentient is building open and decentralized AGI from day one, which is 1.5 years now. What we believed was that the right way to get to AGI will be to allow all these multiple AIs to easily compose with each other and compete with each other. This competition is what RL realizes now. And this composition is what still doesn't happen. There are these giant companies building AGI, but they are building everything on their own. And that's not the best way to get to AGI in our view. We take a more of a marketplace type view where multiple agents can come in, but still it's all presented as a singular AI. That's what Sentient is building, open and decentralized AGI, where anybody, all the builders, whatever they are building, can come and add their AI experience. And we can use all that to give one unified, all-powerful AGI experience to the users.
Okay, if you guys didn't exist, don't you think that like Meta and Mistral and DeepSeek and the combination of these other companies, don't you think they're kind of already doing enough for open source AI?
Open source AI is an ingredient for this, and they're doing okay. I think before DeepSeek, they were not doing enough. DeepSeek is a great wake-up call for for all of the other companies. They're doing okay. This is an ingredient to make this kind of platform come together. We need a lot of open source models. We need a lot of open source frameworks to come in. But to bring it all together into a singular offering, a consumer offering, like a regular, most of the AI offering, is the gap we want to fill. We want to be that glue which puts it all together. And this glue requires a front-end innovation. This glue requires AI innovation. And this glue requires economic incentives to bring it all together, right? The actual business incentives.
Yeah. So I don't fully understand, I did some research into Sentient. I don't really understand how the product works or like what format you're presenting to consumers in. So maybe you could tell me phrase it like, well, it's kind of like Meta's llama models, but then we also do this. Or like, why is Sentient better than these alternatives?
Perfect. So you are coming from the model side. The key product out of Sentient is what is called Sentient Chat, which is in private beta. This is a singular platform consumer product, more like Po.com, if you want to draw a parallel where Po.com is today. But Po.com is a marketplace where everybody can go and plug in their agents. But what we want to do extra is we want to bring it into a singular experience like OpenAI, like a singular platform where you ask this query and that query is taken away with routing, with different data sources. It does your task, protects your query. That's the output that we are looking for. Towards this, our belief is that it can only be done with open source, because if you don't have open models and open frameworks, not enough experiences will be available. Not enough builders will be able to do things. So from that perspective, we build the open source part. From that perspective, we use and extend open source models and bring them here.
Okay, and you said it's similar to Po.com? I don't think, like Po, like from Quora, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Nice. Yeah, that makes sense. Because I know they have like a chat front end, right, where you can have like different tabs to represent like the different AI models.
That's what they're doing. I it's a horrible version of our product. I think we don't want to leave. The whole charm of AI is that we should not leave this kind of decision making in terms of interface to the human. I have some intent and I want the answer or a response to it. It should be in that manner. I don't want all these options available in this manner.
Gotcha, gotcha. Okay, so I found it very intriguing to hear that Peter Thiel's founder fund led your $85 million funding round last year. When you went and pitched Founders Fund, how far along were you? How did you convince them to invest? What did they really love about it?
I think this was very early on open source monetization. And the grand challenge in this was if you come up with some idea like this at that time, was to claim that we will help you monetize open source. There was no deep seek open source for research grade, and Meta was leading it, and Meta has a certain history of it's a very contradicting company, right? Like it supports open source and it has some other play around it all the time. So our main thing, which is when you have such an open platform, when you have such an open thing, how do you actually make sure that there's enough control available to monetize it? How do you make sure there's enough control and guardrails available to make sure that this wild west of AI models are not taking your data and manipulating you in an adversarial way? That's the tech which we call loyal AI. That's the main tech on which Founders Fund was betting at that time. And it's still the main research tech. But now we are more closer to ground in terms of our GTM. Now we are more consumer facing. So we have a consumer product, which is Sentient Chat. But still the big mission is to enable that kind of loyal AI where although you are interacting on an open platform like this, and we are an intermediary between you and an ocean of other builders who you don't know where they are, where their models are hosted, still you can rely on this AI and make sure it works for you. That's the tech that we build.
Okay, well, Peter Thiel is somebody that I have a lot of disagreements with, but I would say that he's based. That slang that the kids say these days. They call somebody based if it seems like he's operating on consistent principles that aren't necessarily shaped by the status quo, the current thing. So Peter Thiel is a based individual. What do you think is his larger vision here, right? Or like what principle do you think he feels? And I know you're a separate person from him, but I feel like he usually has like these deeper reasons for making these kinds of investments.
I think the reason here is that we are entering a very new era. It's just the beginning, although it looks like a lot of talk has happened. And I think there is an alternative to OpenAI as well in terms of open source. And I know Founders Fund doesn't like us saying this thing, but I have to say it because we have said it to them as well. This is the open source competitor to OpenAI. This has to be the goal. And when people say that
Uh-huh.
we are building an open source competitor to OpenAI, uh, it it is not Meta. Meta is not the final product. It's an infra. The Llama model is just an infra part of it. You have to build an equally performant and equally attractive AI, and you have to rely on all the builder energy, which right now is being sort of rejected in some way. That there are not too many options for all the different agent builders, and this agent builder pool is just growing, exploding, right? In the sense that my 9-year-old daughter is an agent builder in some way, right? Like she uses small platforms, and they're expressing some creativity. They're not writing a software, right? They're expressing some creativity. These are fun interactive experiences. Today, where would all these things go? We want to be that platform. And our claim is that some collective of this AI is also an equally powerful AGI offering as this singular monolithic broad offerings. And that's our mission. So this is an alternative path for the AGI mission. And I think generally Founders Fund is aligned with alternative paths for this
Mhm.
mission.
Gotcha, gotcha. Okay, yeah, makes sense. They do seem pro open source. So I know your product, it's already out in the wild, it's already launched. I just saw a stat that you guys have launched Sentient Chat, search with loyal AI, and you touted 500,000 queries answered. Can we just get really specific? You mentioned your daughter uses it. Maybe tell me about one user. What did they input into the product, and what useful
Ah,
thing did they get out?
so we are in private beta. The number is 1 million right now. It's not 500K. It's a little bit of older tweet. Uh, the there are two classes there. One is this giant singular agent, which which has pro search, which has crypto agent, and because our initial pool of users is crypto users, we want to be the number one AI offering for all the crypto native users. So that's the initial pool of users. So we have Pro Search, which can do deep research, all built on open source frameworks, which we have open source, which is accessible for anybody. Uh, then we have a crypto agent, what makes these things special is the kind of real-time data that we have there. Again, this real-time data is not from one or two sources. There are 7, 8 different sources of other providers who have contributed to this. And you can ask about investment, you can ask about news. Crypto is all about alpha. So you can ask about alpha, what's trending, what's going on, and it keeps that information up to date. That's our bigger giant agent, which is a singular offering. Then we have a community agent section where today we have 100 different agents listed and 15 of them are already integrated in live and rest are coming along. These are more smaller or of different kind of agents which are built by other companies and are available here. We recommend them in your journey when and where we feel they're appropriate. But the vision with this community agents is that what we have right now are not crappy enough. I want really, really fun and crappy agents there. I see this new set of experiences, this one job agents, this small interaction agents coming in and uh, you know dominating the space. That's the vision on the community agent side. So we have the giant agent which routes, which takes you to all the places, all the data sources, whatever model it takes to answer your thing or do your task, and then we recommend on the side what we are doing. The primary use case
Mhm.
today is finding alpha, crypto news, these kind of searches.
Okay, where your product stands today, do you think that it's basically kind of similar or equal to like a GPT, from OpenAI or like this private $20 a month offering? Do you feel like you're just kind of matching them, but you're doing it for free or open source? Or do you also think that there's use cases today where you outshine them?
So I can compare it with GPT. So the use cases where we outshine them is the data sources that we have today. And the crypto analysis that we do, that's because that's our index initial use case that we want to outshine them on. That's where we outshine them today.
Can you give me a comparison of the status quo of other products versus your product on a specific query? Because I think it's very important to be able to point to a few individual examples where it's just very clear. Yes, for this particular example, we're doing better.
Right. So just an example off the top of my head, which I saw today morning being tweeted about by a user, is analysis of how should I invest in near token over another token. And the reason what where we were able to outshine was because of how we use coding and how we use more data sources in this CoinGecko, how we use sentiment from Kaito, and we bring out a more complete report on, yes, this is why you should invest in near, or this is why you shouldn't invest in near. Now, this use case is one of the use cases which we have started with, like crypto queries and deep search. But the idea is to keep on expanding horizontally, one more agent at a time, all behind the same router. Today, it's just the pro search agent and the crypto agent behind the router.
Mhm. So in this particular example, you're saying you had an advantage on the data sources, like you just have more crypto advice type of data, crypto analysis type of data. Is it like a news source? I'm just curious, what data source is it?
Mostly, so what's happening in crypto in terms of data sources, many companies are indexing data in a different manner. It's the same data, but how do you take it out? What do you keep ready? What kind of like there are different projects doing these kind of real time data things because this data is on chain data, exchange level data. So people take it, clean it up, organize it in a particular way so that frameworks like this can use it.
And in your head-to-head comparison, where your query is giving better advice about investing in near token compared to OpenAI's GPT, do you think that you can trace that to OpenAI taking in the same data but not processing it the same way?
No, no, it's not. It doesn't have that data. OpenAI roughly just uses
Okay.
CoinGecko, and CoinGecko is not a single API. There are many, many APIs. This second part is also important as we move from search to this answer-based agents, right? You want to, the agents are giving one answer right away and putting some opinion right away. Unlike search, where the onus was on you, you go and click and you see, and now know which source you are looking at. Now the agent has to take a call and say, this is the answer. And many a time, these answers have some conflicting views. So, for instance, if you, instead of CoinGecko, use some other API, you may have a very different view on which is the top token for various reasons. Okay. And so, what happens in this case is what's happening today is OpenAI declares, I'm just using CoinGecko and I chose one. Perplexity is a little bit different. What Perplexity does is it doesn't declare the source, but it is somehow people already believe in it. So, it's still one source which they have committed to. So what we try to do differently is we try to show according to this source, this is what it's saying. According to this source, this is what it's saying. And somehow give a better summary that way. That's one small difference that we take in our summary step in the search data.
So going back to this idea of the one example that's really showing your differentiation here, you're saying it's an example where somebody asked about advice whether to invest in your token, and unlike the OpenAI API, which is kind of like here's the opinion from CoinGecko, you're saying your version of it is like here's the opinion from a bunch of sources and you can compare. So that's the difference.
That's the difference. And also the analysis, because we write a code, OpenAI doesn't write a code anymore. It just takes those API and whatever that API offers, it just gives that. We, as a part of our crypto agent, also have a Codact framework integrated. So it also gives it also writes a code and does more deeper analysis and gives you more fundamental numbers than what a CoinGecko API will offer you by default.
Okay, so yeah, I'm still just trying to wrap my head around the differentiation here. So when you
Yeah.
say, okay, you're giving multiple sources, OpenAI is only going to give one source, do you think it's fundamentally because you're going to keep crawling multiple sources compared to OpenAI, or just because you're making a product decision to show multiple sources? What exactly is the differentiation fundamentally?
Oh, we don't crawl. Right now we crawl, but the hope here is
Okay.
that all the companies who are crawling and collecting, right, they all start integrating it. Today, even today, this data sources that we use is not just one. It's like there is, as I said, Kaito, there is CoinGecko, and there are a few more APIs that we have integrated here.
Right. Yeah. So I'm trying to understand long term, right? So fundamentally, what are you and OpenAI doing differently? Do you think that OpenAI long term is going to refuse to also ingest these other data sources?
I Yeah, if you have a data source today, you as a suppose you build a company which has data source, what's the mechanism you have to make it available to coin to OpenAI?
So you're saying that your differentiation is you're working with all these data sources for them to like expose a public feed, and then you're going to crawl the public feed, and you just think OpenAI is not going to do that?
Yeah, so data sources, agents, models, all of it. This was an example of a data source, right? So we want to integrate more and more agents built by others, production grade agents, not just regular toy agents, right? Not just prototypes. We want to integrate those agents with us. We want to integrate more data sources, and we want to have more models in which people can build around.
Do you think something is fundamental there where these people who are giving you the data, do you think they're going to refuse to give OpenAI the data?
I don't think so. I think OpenAI deciding what data to take, because they have to make this engineering in this particular manner, right? Uh, they I don't feel, and this is the bet we have taken, that OpenAI is here to help monetize all these guys. OpenAI is there to build a monopoly. Their approach to AGI is that they need to have all the data. They will collect all the data. They they don't, because that's how high their valuation is right now. They want to collect all the data. They want to keep every monetization, everything to themselves. That's their approach. Monolithic AI, build from all the data sources and completely control with them. Our approach is this is a single channel distribution channel shared with every AI builder. Because we are the distribution channel shared with every AI builder. They can integrate their data sources with us. They can integrate their agents with us. That's the approach we are taking, which I believe is very similar to Poe's approach too. But I'll talk about differences with them.
Right. So when I look at different startups with my angel investor hat on, it's a common failure mode of how people think about startups where they get really hyped about an abstract pitch. And then when I ask about specific use cases, it's kind of like coming later, right? Like it's not really ready. I mean, so in your case, I'm not saying you're doing this, right? But
Yeah.
you're pitching a lot of nice abstractions like, hey, we've got an open community for developers. We're the only ones who are really going to like be on the developer side, help them really monetize sustainably. So you've got all these really nice sounding abstract pitches. And then when I ask about the use case, it's like, well, we're like ahead on some data sources for crypto. So it's a little bit, it gets a little bit weaker there in my opinion when we get into specifics. But let me just ask you this to confirm. So, like me as a user personally, I'm pretty happy with OpenAI and Claude and Gemini. Do you think that somebody like me in the next year, let's say, is going to have a compelling reason to switch over to using sentient chat instead?
That's absolutely the goal. And I would admit this thing about AI, that once you start entering consumer AI, like which we are entering, although there's a crypto part to it which I'm not talking about, right? Right now, this differentiators and this 10 query class victories is we are bootstrapping one at a time. So today our initial cohort is this crypto cohorts, because that's where we have the most attention. That's where we want to conquer first. Our next goal is to reach an AI user like yourself who is maybe not interested in this crypto alpha and these new data sources, but is more interested in some tasks or is more interested in some experiences. So when we are incubating these builders to build agents with us, this is an opinionated incubation with the sectors that we want to attack next. That's how we are. So the hope is 1 year We want you to be a part of our user base.
I mean, let's try to imagine how I would ever be convinced to go switch, right? I
Yeah,
mean, if you look at how I'm using GPT, forget about the image generation. Doesn't sound like your
right.
specialty, right?
Absolutely not. Yeah.
I talk to it a lot about random medical questions, right? Anything I'm wondering about, because I love how it can like synthesize, the different factors, everything it knows about me, or I help my wife do that stuff. Do you think
Right.
that's a use case you're going to pull away from these other competitors?
We don't we haven't looked at the medical part as a use case so far. So because I'll tell you where our builder energy is. So what we have been seeing is first is information use case in crypto. Next is more around financial, similarly extending to financial things. Next is more autonomous agents who can invest on your behalf and you can do this, take these actions on your behalf on smaller amounts. This is this is one trajectory which we have mapped out already. Is autonomous agents is also a very interesting thing happening in crypto where they can hold wallets and they can invest on your behalf. So more autonomous on that part of things. This is one trajectory that we have. The other trajectory is around more creative things, around more sort of the TikTok of AI, where there are these experiences which you want to, the Italian brain rot coming through this AI thing. That's another sector which is coming up. If you look at our model that we put out, this model called Dobby, the entertaining part of that model is around how he talks and what personality that they have. So this is other thread where we are building this models with personality. We believe that uh, this AI as a concierge, right? Here I'm here to serve you. You do this and you come back. Will you will have a few personalities which will come up, which will be very popular. I think Grok is one popular personality. Although I must say that our model came a little bit before Grok. It has a very distinct persona and it has a very distinct personality and a way of talking. This personality based models fueling similar agents and similar experiences is the next segment that we are looking at. So that's where our user base is today.
So to recap what I'm hearing so far, when you talk about all these use cases, it sounds like if I go to Sam Altman and I say, "What do you think of these use cases?" I think he would tell me like, "Oh yeah, we're going to be working on solutions for that too. We're also going to help you make agents to help you, gather your financial info or whatever you want to do." But then you would say that your community is just going to be happier being this open source community, and so differentiation is going to emerge from that. Is that a pretty good summary?
Yeah, the differentiation will emerge from how many different builders we want to align to build this. We believe there are so many ways to process information, have an opinionated data around it and all that and experiences that is if you get it community first, you can do much more. It's like do you want to be Netflix or do you want to be YouTube? A bit of that. Like Netflix is obviously also a distribution channel, but Netflix is a heavy production house. And we want to be a YouTube.
Yeah, because the user generated content is incredibly
Yeah.
valuable and adds up to more than what Netflix generates.
Right, exactly. In principle, Netflix can generate everything which YouTube will have. But the thing is, YouTube moves differently. TikTok moves differently.
Right. So, I mean, I think OpenAI would say that it's, a better analogy might be like Google search, right? Because a lot of what OpenAI is doing is it's grabbing all the information and all the like API endpoints from the web and it's directing you to them, right? So they see themselves as being the beginning of your search journey. So in that sense, they're analogous to YouTube in terms of having like a web's worth of user generated content.
Uh, so you're saying that OpenAI will have a search over the agents which are available over the web? If they take that path, right?
What I'm saying is you're kind of implying in your analogy, you're saying OpenAI is like Netflix, but if you look at what they're offering, most of what they're offering is just based on synthesizing data that they don't produce.
Well, that's because that specific use case, chatbot, the way we see it, is heavily dependent on search. I don't think that's the right way to think of it, that this data is coming from somewhere else, right? Because that's the user behavior which I'm sure OpenAI discovered and were a bit surprised by it. Perplexity called it first. And we discovered the hard way too. If you try to launch any agent and don't tell the user what it does very clearly, user will ask for the latest information. And OpenAI, that's why integrated search. But it's still a singular experience. The search plus agent is a deep search agent experience. It's a singular experience. It's not more than that experience. That we need to have for sure. Of course, there are questions about how that search would be and what that search would ingest. Then there are other things around what do you analyze? What do you do to the data, right? How do you reconcile and can you allow few more options there and what different kinds of data sources will come in? That's the horizontal spread that I'm talking about. And so you see many agents which OpenAI sees either as a competition or a subset, and they may not see it, but they exist. Like all the people building all kind of AI are somewhat in parallel to them. In principle, even something as weird, I'm calling it weird because it's a hard business use case. Manus AI, OpenAI in principle can consider that as well. Why can't they have an async thing? But the kind of bespoke integration and things needed to enable something like Manus or all async task agent is something which OpenAI would not go to. That's what the thought is today. In general, something like that is best done by everybody else with every builder together rather than a single company thinking of all possible experiences of AI and giving it.
Right now, of course, OpenAI would say, look, we have an API, right? We have a widely used API, and then other people release products on top of our API.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But what are they missing?
In this sense, we don't compete with them. Many of the agents on our platform are also using Open AI's API, but declaring this is the model they are using. And in this sense, we don't compete. We don't compete with saying that we will not use their model. We compete in saying that the chat experience that they have, singular one, that experience itself should be built over multiple agents rather than having monolithic single O3 like models. O3 is great for its speed, but again, you don't have option. Let's take an example of O3, which is I'm a heavy user of O3. I like it. But one problem I have with O3 is that for every query, it is the same amount of time. I don't have much options about maybe I want a cheaper answer to the same query, right? Maybe I want a faster answer. And it's still not as bad as 4.0 or whatever has replaced 4.0. I'm still using 4.0 till it's completely discontinued. And uh, so that whole space of experiences is where a community build version exists.
Okay. Now, you've got these models called the Dobby models. Are they kind of like head to head competing with Meta's Llama models?
No, Dobby is built on Llama. Dobby is designed to make a point about how to build a model the way people want it to be. So the goal was to show that you can build models which are directly controlled and governed by a large population.
I see. So is it kind of like a fine tuning of Llama?
It's a fine tune of Llama. It's a fine tune of Llama.
Uh-huh. And specifically, I probably don't fully understand this, but the idea is like you
Sure.
ask Dobby a question and then it knows to then like federate it out to something from the community.
That's how the initial constitution of Dobby and the basic framework of Dobby was federated. Then you expand that data and build a character with a very specific tone and with a very specific value alignment.
We've learned a little bit about Sentient's products. Let's talk more high level about our views and recommendations for humanity's use of AI. Sound good?
Absolutely.
Okay, so the high level question I want to ask about open source AI is what do you think is better for the US, like versus China versus other countries? Do you think it's better if we make a lot of progress open or closed source?
Okay. So there are a few parts to this answer. So first is that I think open source infra is what we all need to do right now. And the reason I'm saying this is because the kind of auditability, the kind of innovation, the kind of things it brings in is very important in this kind of transformational technology, which can either make or break for humanity. And behind closed door development of this technology, I'm I'm absolutely uncomfortable about it. If anything, the recent geopolitical developments have sort of confirmed my suspicion of these kind of things. And I'm talking about various contexts. I'm talking about how China approached AI after sanctions of sorts on compute for them. I'm also talking about how opinions are used these days in politics openly, especially U.S. politics itself. U.S. politics is a very special place, and it's sort of very direct communication politics, and negotiations are direct communication based. I feel this messaging with AI coming in the middle, I feel we are in some very special place right now where mainstream politics is directly relying on instruments like opinion building and influencing over the social media. And AI, of course, is that intermediary which will do that. So this AI which everybody is using, I would I want it to be open source. I want to know which models are under the hood, and I want to know which models are there. This for me as a user. Me as a developer, obviously also want these open source artifacts because the innovation of applications and the progress of AI itself is faster on open source.
Okay, are you familiar with the arguments from Leopold Aschenbrenner and Dario Amodei?
No, I'm not familiar.
Okay, I mean, I'll try. I hope I'm paraphrasing them correctly. These arguments seem to make sense to me, like the basic case for how we should develop AI closed source. So the idea is, if we were to develop open source, imagine we make like another breakthrough and it's fully open source, and the breakthrough allows us to like have these agents that can really shape up our military, right? They can like craft defense strategies. They can coordinate like all of our military assets. So we could even have like a missile shield that actually works. So suddenly, we really upgrade our war capabilities on attack and defense in that scenario, which a lot of people think is realistic, just in terms of like how much better AI can suddenly get, replacing on the scale of like an entire military coordination capability. They have big dreams for what this AI can do. Imagine we get there over the course of just a few years. In that case, is it better for us to open source and just have all of our competitor countries just also instantly have that? Or would it be nice to have a lead? Because I think Dario and Leopold, they love taking the angle that let's try to give the US a lead.
Yeah, so this is exactly the point. This argument is all about we and us. And the whole point is that if you take a we and us approach and you can sustain that competing global pressure of the other, then you should do it closed source. Yeah, this argument can be made. This has some belief on being able to do it open source, and this is an argument where every innovation should be closed, because imagine, especially if it's this breakthrough level innovation. The other part of this is that is the rest of the world. If this is not open source, if this is not diffused, then these balances, the checks and balances go off. And a technology which is so crazy and so transformational, I'm coming from that side, that I'm pretty sure if few countries or one or two countries have it closed source and figured out, the rest of the world, which has directly or indirectly feeding to this, at the end of the day, the whole AI thing started in open source. And at the end of the day, it's built on knowledge which is available over the internet in open source. The success of internet is that everybody's connecting to it, right? And and that success now is suddenly taken and you're trying to lock it because suddenly you feel some big breakthrough has happened. And the counter force is arguing that, okay, we have to resist this possibility. We have to make sure that everybody else has equal access to the technology. And that's
Uh,
what this
a
claim is.
little confused how you're relating to what I said. So in the
Yeah.
scenario, right? I mean,
Yeah.
are you accepting that it's even a premise worth talking about? Is there a decent probability that maybe one country will be the first to make this breakthrough that actually is very significant militarily? Is that a reasonable premise?
It's a actually very feasible premise that AI impacts military in a very drastic way and the
I
kind of
agree.
strategic building.
Okay, so if you accept that premise, so if I understand correctly, then, or if you're engaging with that premise, are you just saying that you want every country to level up militarily at the exact same time?
Absolutely, it has to be open. The defense and offense of it has to be openly developed.
I mean, even North Korea, is you want it to be open to North Korea?
Yeah, I know this is the kind of argument, but the technology is coming one way or the other. North Korea will have it.
But I'm specifically asking, I'm specifically asking. You get to pick the timeline in this hypothetical, right? So if your response is it's definitely coming, well, you get to control. Do you want it to come to the U.S. first?
Why would I say that? I'm not a US citizen at all. And I have seen the effect of getting those technologies coming to the US first. This whole argument is very US centric, is what I'm trying to say.
So which country do you want to have priority here, right? What's like your favorite country if you could pick one country to be in the lead?
Would not pick one country to be in the lead. This is the chance where it is not one country to be in lead situation. I want checks and balances on this. I want this AI opportunity to come to all countries together, the baseline, and then all the countries individually take and develop that part separately in parallel if they want, right? The part which they find can be differentiated. But there's a very important need for a counter force who makes sure that all of this core based technology is available openly. I'm not ready for 100 years of asymmetry if it comes in that manner, right? And then that whole part of the story.
What is your country of citizenship?
My country of citizenship, India.
Gotcha. And you're based in Dubai right now and you're doing Sentient?
Yeah, yeah. I'm based in Dubai this year.
Nice, nice, nice. Okay. Do you have any favoritism that you want India to come out ahead in this whole race?
No, I don't think so. I don't think there's a chance like that too. One very counterintuitive thing which happened, right, is I would have worried that China comes first in this race because of where we are located. And one very counterintuitive thing which happened is now China is flag bearer of open source models to counter this possibility. that one or two countries can dominate and start cornering this technology and taking it in the military direction in this manner. So the higher the bar is for that, right? The part that you lock, it should be as much as open available as possible, and then the rest of it can be locked. That bar should be very high.
Okay, are there any countries that you would like to be behind? Because, North Korea and Iran, don't you think it's great if we can slow them down?
So the slowing down, how does this happen? What is your model of slowing down?
Yeah, so in this exact scenario, the way we slow them down is because the countries we like, let's say the US, I think the US is like a better than average country morally for if for the amount of power that they can exercise over the
It's my
world.
second,
For
just
me,
for the record, it's
yeah,
my second most favorite country. I spent 10 years there. I did my PhD in the US. I gained a lot from US education system. And I'm in awe of all US has achieved. So it's my second most favorite country in the world.
great, great, great. Yeah, I mean, it's my first favorite country personally, and
I
then
know.
if you compare that to like Iran and North Korea, right, they're going to be in like the bottom few percent, in my opinion, right? So you don't think that it's at all good if the US can have cutting edge. I mean, think about flipping the game board, right? Like, let me just like deepen this scenario for you, right? Let me flesh it out. Imagine this new AI tool is so powerful that it can even shape up Iran's military to go head to head with the US. Is that something you want?
See, this is what I'm hearing in your argument, that let US develop this tool and keep it to itself because we know better, and we will not give it to others because that's how we can protect everybody else. I'm just saying that there are counter forces which don't buy this argument in this form, and which will definitely build AI model in open as much as possible, because that's where they can combine global forces to have that threshold at which they also have a chance in building some reasonable AI of military grade, of all grade. These counter forces exist, and I want to support those counter forces. The open, the decentralized counterbalance to the centralized, I save everybody and trust me view.
I still don't have full clarity on which part of the hypothetical you're disagreeing with. So let me ask you, let me simplify the hypothetical a little bit. So let's say the only two countries in the world are the US and North Korea. And let's say, for the sake of argument, that this new AI technology, a year's worth of AI progress on the latest closed source models, would be so good they could flip the game board. That like if North Korea had
No,
it,
I'm rejecting this premise. I'm rejecting this premise that there are only two countries. I'm telling you, there are India, Pakistan, many other countries. Some of them align with US, some of them don't align with US, and some of them align with Russia, some of them align with Iran, some of them don't.
can you just humor me on the premise that you reject? Because then we can go back and talk about why you think the premise is flawed. But if there really were only two countries in the world, the U.S. and North Korea, in that situation, would you just say like, okay, it's better if the U.S. can go ahead using closed source?
So in this hypothetical, you have said there's a one absolute good and one absolute bad. Do you support absolute good, or do you support, in your view, absolute bad?
Can we weaken it a little bit and have it literally be the U.S. and North Korea? Like, it's not absolutely good enough for that. It's just the U.S. versus North
I
Korea.
don't think this is how the world is laid out. I think there are complex there are complex connections. I don't even know that what is the exact play between US and North Korea. As if US will never try to befriend North Korea.
What about US versus China? Let's say the only players, let's just say hypothetically, something about building complex AI is only accessible to the US and China. Let's say it requires like, a terawatt of energy or whatever, right? And just resources that
Yeah.
only the US and China have, hypothetically. In that case, do you have any preference for having the US run ahead of China in AI technology?
No, I want to exactly prevent that situation where it comes to this binary. That's where open source is important. That's the baseline which prevents this binary which we are getting used to, and which we want to recreate if we do the centralized AI.
You said the US is your second favorite country after India. So you don't want to show favoritism to your second favorite country in terms of shaping the future of the world?
No, not in shit. No, I don't trust even my favorite country for that favoritism. I think I think if that happens, right, the whole the whole future of the world that many of us are looking for is severely challenged. I don't think the future is one benevolent leader leading the whole world. I think it is more decentralized and more shared ownership. Every person in largely most of the world with above certain threshold is born with a dream of being one of the foremost population of the world, or part of that foremost. They are not born thinking that I am in some secondary or thirdary or tertiary ecosystem. In this world, this whole idea that we want to enable one benevolent leader in technology to take care of all of us does not apply. I don't think that's the world we are fighting. At least that's the whole point. That's why we need decentralization. That's why we need openness. That's why we need this kind of ecosystem.
Okay, so my concern here is that when you have sufficiently advanced AI, which could be coming in just the next couple of years, as early as that, it's allowing you to do a lot of terrorism and chaos on a scale the world has never seen. So you could imagine an actor like North Korea, which right now is pretty limited. Like, yes, they could launch a couple nukes at the US, but that's still pretty limited. They're not an existential threat to the US quite. But then if you give them AI, suddenly they might actually leapfrog. I mean, in North Korea, if they manage to step ahead of the US in AI, they could actually put a stranglehold on the entire military operations of the US just via that AI, right? So I see it as like this major chaos agent. And I think, your vision of like, oh, everybody should just have full access to the chaos agent. Are you at all worried that it's just going to be too much chaos?
No, so I want to understand what is this form of AI that you are talking about. Can you be more specific about this chaos agent AI? What can it do as an AI?
Yeah,
And
so that is a
right.
good question. So my stance on AI is that I think it can go far above human capabilities. I think there's a lot of headroom above human intelligence, human capabilities, and I think AI might be rushing into that headroom in the next few years. I don't think anybody knows whether it is or isn't. I certainly think that it will in the next 50 years. I think that's plenty of time for AI to get way above human capabilities, but I also think it very well might rush there in the next 2 years, right? I think, there's recursive self-improvement dynamics. There's just once you get above human level, who knows how high you can go, right? So I'm very worried about how high it can go. Is that something you're worried about?
No, I think
Okay.
AI, like any advanced technology, and especially the security aspects of AI, will remain a red team, blue team game, will remain a cat and mouse game. It has to be offense and defense, and it will continue that way. Even today, when somebody like this, the skepticism that people had, at least I saw that part in India, I'm sure in the US also, when they went online, when the banking system went online. Of course, there are
Mhm.
attacks, and of course, my whole life's worth savings are in an account somewhere and are distributed in some online world. And those accounts can also be taken by the same North Korea, right? So, with by that token, I have to make sure that everything is safe, right? And that will continue. That cat and mouse game continues, and offense and defense have to grow continuously. That's the world we are in. That's how it will grow. But there is a base technology. There's a base technology. If you deny that, for example, should we deny the world any compute? Because compute led to AI, and AI keeps a super AI. Where is that line that you're drawing is what I want to understand in this argument. There's a line, you agree, right? There's a line.
So first of all, when you make an analogy to rollouts of other technologies, right? Like, oh my God, we've got payment processing on the internet, or like, oh my God, we've got social media. We don't realize what we've done. No, but it's kind of net good, I would argue. Anytime you make these other analogies, the fundamental difference is that there's no nightmare scenario. The nightmare scenario is like, oh my God, banking on the internet, there's so many hackers, it's so insecure. Fine, so roll it back. It's fine, right? Humanity doesn't go extinct, right? So there's a rollback option. Whereas in the case of superintelligent AI, there's no rollback. It's just a permanent loss of power.
No, that's what I want to understand. What is this super intelligent AI? And maybe you should tell me a little bit about what, because it's about a line, right? What all it
Yeah.
can do.
Okay. Yeah. So let's go into a common part of the show I do where we basically compare our beliefs about what super intelligent AI is and what are like the most likely types of things it can do. So to kick off that part of the segment, I'm going to ask you the most important question. You ready for this?
Absolutely.
P Doom, P Doom, what's your P Doom? What's your P Doom? What's your P Doom?
Himanshu Tyagi, what's your P doom?
Yeah. So I thought of an estimate after looking at your show earlier. And my P Doom is uh it's a high number. It's about 2%, and it's mostly because there are too many unknowns for this.
Okay. So 2% is still pretty low, right? There are too many unknown unknowns, and yet you're willing to bet at 1 to 49 to 1 odds that we're not doomed. That seems incredibly confident.
Yes, yes. And I think and you should correct me about how do you, because you asked a probabilistic number, right? So what I feel about probabilistic numbers in this kind of scenarios, then there's so few data points of events which have brought humanity close to extinction. If you do this kind of probabilistic analysis, is that it's more about what prior you have and how do you believe humanity behaves and what has this prior got. And whatever prior I think, right, I feel that it's very low chance, and very low would be much less than 1%. But there I see that, okay, there are concerns about the way wars are fought now in terms of drones, the way AI will be used to design viruses, maybe. And I don't know what kind of AI it is. I don't think the current AI is that kind of AI. there are chances that one player goes above other. And so from that, I said, okay, let me add some more to it. So it's not one, it's more than one, definitely less than five. And I come with a number like two. That's how I come up with this estimate.
If I understand correctly, so you started from like a very low baseline because you see the human species as being like very robust and resilient, but then you updated it upward a little bit until you got to 2%.
Exactly. That's how I did it. And
Hmm.
ideally, I don't see a grand framework for something like this, in the sense that, as I said, they're not enough examples in my mind where I would say that this was a scenario and this is what humanity did there. My general belief in this case is that we are just beginning, and we need all these machines, we need all this disruptive technology to be able to solve more and more problems and to be able to expand further. I can say more on it. So my number is 2%.
I think there's a big difference in my worldview where I see humanity as a lot more fragile than that. So when I say what is just generally, even without knowing about AI, what is just generally the probability humanity is going to get wiped out? I'll probably agree it's lower than 50% because, yeah, we are very crafty, right? Intelligence is very powerful. But at the same time, the universe doesn't care about us at all, right? It keeps doing things to try to wipe us out. It
Ah,
wipes out galaxies and species
okay.
all the time, right? That's kind
Okay,
of what
this
it
is a
does.
great. I think let's define the question. What's the time frame we are talking about?
Right, exactly. So when I normally ask the question, I just say a few decades. So let's say be doomed by 2100, right? That literally all humans will be dead by 2100. You think it's only 2%. And my baseline already starts out more like 10% plus, because I even just think we'll nuke ourselves back to the caveman era by 2100. I think there's more than a 10% chance of that.
Do you think we can nuke ourselves to extinction?
I agree that it is hard. Yeah, I don't think we can nuke ourselves to extinction. So I guess if you're literally talking about every last human and it's just nuclear doom, that's actually a good scenario, right? So I guess we can even potentially take that all the way out. Biological doom seems to have a higher chance of being able to pick off every last human. If you got a really good replicating virus that's really hard to detect, then even really good bioprotection will probably have a leak at some point.
Right. So we just came out of a pandemic, right? So what is your score on a pandemic's ability? Let's say this was not human design, but let's say it was more vicious than previous one.
I think this particular pandemic was maybe 5% as good as a pandemic could be, right? I think it could have been a lot worse. I mean, there's all the dials you can tweak. You can tweak the incubation period. What if the incubation period was a whole year before it struck, right? Then so many people would get it before they would have time to react, right? And then of
Ah,
course there's the lethality factor. So instead of being like 0.1%, it could be like 30%, right? It could be a huge lethality factor, and then the R factor could be a lot higher, right? So there's all these dials you could turn if you wanted to engineer a pandemic.
right. So the probability according to me, for somebody designing and executing such a plan with all the checks and balances that exist in the current scenario, how nation states lock their borders, how we could even do a very hard lockdown very quickly, how we can start the vaccine build up very quickly. I feel that probability, the base probability itself is very low. It's like base probability for me, which you said 10%, I would say would be, yeah, close to zero, whatever that number you would say. Till
Right.
2100,
Yeah,
which
I
is
mean,
my number is still in my lifetime, right? Let's say I live till 2100, uh, which is very unlikely.
yeah, yeah, sure. So, I mean, I think I don't disagree too much. I mean, I guess when we're just talking about the probability of killing every last human by 2100 and there's no I don't actually think 2% is that far off. Like, I'd put it a little bit higher, but you're right. I mean, without AI, humans are pretty resilient, and assuming that there's no asteroid coming in the next 100 years, which is very unlikely that an asteroid. So, okay. So I kind of agree with you there. So I do think that a lot of my issue really does hinge on specifically super intelligent AI. I think specifically super intelligent AI has a very accessible way to kill all humans if it wanted to.
Perfect. So basically, this argument is about what you want to understand is what is this notion of super intelligent AI? What are its features? What it can do, cannot do, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And so let me ask you. Yeah, I think the crux of the issue is: do you think that there's a lot of headroom above human intelligence? So like imagine the smartest human, or like all humans working together are still no match for what I imagine an AI could potentially be in as little as like a few years. Does that sound plausible to you at all? That we have this AI that has like godlike powers?
We already have compute which has godlike powers, much above all humans combined.
Yeah, it's godlike powers, but it also has like you can also just like fire a bullet in it and then it's dead, right? So that's not fully godlike, right? I'm talking about robust godlike powers.
That's what I want to understand, right? For example, just the ability to invert a hash is a godlike power. All humans combined cannot do it, and a large computer can do it,
Totally.
right?
So yeah, I mean, you're right. This is true. So maybe I can clarify. I can say like godlike powers without also subhuman weaknesses, right? So just like uniformly godlike powers from a human's perspective. Like there's no you won't look at it and be like, oh yeah, this AI has all these different skills, but I can also go around the back and still get the better of it. Like no, there won't kind of be that Achilles heel. That's what I'm talking about.
No, that's the point. When I hear these arguments, right, there is a sudden leap of faith where when intangibles, we're talking about tangible, smaller powers. And then there is this notion of something which can destroy everything. So the reason this is very important is because at some point I'll say some of these things will not happen. The way world is positioned, some of these things will not happen, right? Otherwise, in this form of the argument which you are saying, right, that there is something which can do everything, then obviously it can also destroy humanity. That's not a complete argument, right? My point is, what is it that this AI can do, which will ultimately lead to destruction of humanity? And then my counter typically in my own mental exercise, my counter typically is in, oh, this is impossible. This is not what world forces will allow, and this is not how the world is designed. That's how I sort of think of it.
Okay, so it sounds like maybe your answer will be that you don't think there's that much headroom above human intelligence, but let me frame the question like this. So
Hmm.
there's this dimension that I call optimization power. I think the term was coined by Eliezer Yudkowsky.
Hmm.
And the idea of optimization power is you can compare if all of humanity is trying to steer the future one way, like we want to keep Earth habitable for humans. And then you
Right.
also have a super intelligent AI that's been able to like replicate itself. It's got like a billion copies. It's got a lot of resources. Maybe it's even tricked some humans into working for it. So it's got, it's a significant agent in the world and it wants to steer the universe somewhere else, right? Maybe paper clips is the classic example, unaligned human values, or maybe it has kind of like human values, but it doesn't fully get it. Maybe it just wants to like inject as much fentanyl as possible into as many humans as possible, right? So it just has like slightly different values. And it's also trying to steer the future. And you can define this dimension called optimization power of basically who is going to use the same planet's worth of resources to steer the future where they want to go, right? Who has more
Hmm.
optimization power in the sense that like you and I have more optimization power than like any 5-year-old, right? Like their brain, they just can't do it. They just can't steer the future as effectively as we can. So you can imagine, I guess that's my question to you is, do you think that it's plausible or reasonably likely, as I do, that within a few years or maybe a few decades at most, you're going to have these AIs that just have more optimization power than humanity?
I think that it will not have any intent of this kind. His optimization power will come through. So how will that happen? Somebody actually,
Well, okay, but forget about intent, right? Let's just say let's say it's a tool, but it's like a ridiculously powerful
how would
tool.
that happen, right? Somebody has designed an RL pipeline with the right cost function or right objective function and train the AI to be better on that kind of defenses, right?
Well, in order to make the hypothetical simpler, what if we don't even worry about how it's built? And I'm just asking, like, in terms of like possible artifacts, right? If an alien built it, could an alien send us an AI on a flash drive, right? That just had more optimization power than humanity.
See, this is again that argument where in your assumption you have already assumed that you already have that feature which destroys humanity. My point is there is no path to that in the current human ecosystem. Humans will compete and regulate.
I mean, but before we talk about whether there's a path to that, I'm just asking a simpler question, which is like, does this
Yes.
artifact potentially exist? Because if you say this artifact doesn't even potentially exist, then it's a simpler argument, right? So let's try to have the simplest possible argument.
No, I don't think this artifact exists or can be built in today's ecosystem.
Okay, so forget about can be built, right? I'm just asking you if you have it's a flash drive, right? If we're just asking about
Ah,
possible configurations of bits on a flash drive, is there a theoretically possible configuration of bits that encodes an AI that if you then run it, it now out optimizes humanity, right? It steers the world to where it's
no, what control does this AI have? This by default, the software is not enough. What does it have? What tools does it have? What controls have been given to it?
so now I've successfully simplified the argument, right? Because now we don't even have to talk about what humans can build because you're already pushing back on the idea that it ever even could exist on a flash drive.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's that logic plus the control that's given to it, right? The powerful model or whatever which has this logic and ability to reason, and then what controls are given to it. There that these are two different parts of the, and you need to enable something like what you are saying, you need this whole control plus logic at one place, and with this sort of knobs that it can turn around and do things,
Mhm.
right?
Okay, so just to recap what I'm hearing from you. So even if you had an alien, the smartest alien or God himself is able to build this flash drive, even God is just no match for the fact that any program on a
Mhm.
flash drive is ultimately going to crap out. It's not going to be able to do that much because it's going to like need resources. So there's just no such thing as a flash drive that can ever exist that can then like spread and outcompete humanity. You're just saying that's just an impossible scenario.
Yeah, next 100 years impossible unless you have changed everything in compute, where you can open all our crypto locks and open all our everything.
Now, when you were talking before, I think you made reference to like you need like actuators, right? So you think that this kind of flash drive, it's just never going to get its hands on like motors or like, fine motor control like human hands. You think that's the bottleneck to controlling the world?
No, the access to even digital assets, right? Access to the cryptographic locks that you're putting for everything, right? And access to hardware locks and all kind of security things that you put for everything, right? Even a very genius, super evil sitting in some country, let's say North Korea, for example, uh, cannot really control anything in the US right now because they cannot access those servers, those artifacts, those things.
Really? I mean, my understanding is North Korea runs plenty of botnets.
Yeah, but there are the defense, right? Like that's what I'm saying. It's like a cat and mouse race there, right? And it's how does it gather those resources? So now what you are proposing is this very uh, super intelligent, not in just terms of problem solving, super intelligence in terms of coordinating human activity, super intelligence in terms of convincing people, super intelligence in terms of
I mean, you're talking about cryptography. You're talking cryptography being a blocker, but like humans build botnets all the time. So the premise here would just be that you take the best human botnet builder and then you do that even better than that person, right? Because it's going to be superhuman. So you don't think, I mean, if my laptop and your laptop, you don't think that like the world's best hacker working for like a million subjective years could take over both of our laptops?
no, that's the point about cryptography, right? It's asymmetric. Defense is much easier than offense in cryptography, right? So it's not so easy, even for a nation state, to sometimes break through my
You
laptop.
think that literally your laptop is no match for a super intelligent AI to break into today?
Not my laptop. Yeah, a competent server.
So are you conceding that there's a billion laptops in the world today that a super intelligent AI could readily break into?
Yeah, billion I give you. Yeah, yeah. That they can. That
Okay.
even a hacker can. Even a hacker can break into a billion
So the
laptops.
reason I'm asking is because remember I was just trying to find the bottleneck, right? Because you seem
Yeah.
skeptical about the powers of a flash drive with a powerful AI. So I'm saying, where's the bottleneck? I thought that you pointed to cryptography and the ability to break into things, but now you're admitting, well, it's going to get a billion processors working for it. So what's the bottleneck exactly? Why can't it consolidate power?
So sorry. What are you saying? So there are two parts, by the way, which we are talking about here. One is, let's assume there is some super intelligence logic, which we have not agreed to what it can do, but let's say it can make a plan and execute it. You're saying there's somebody who's designed an AI which can make a plan like, let me hack into a particular drone fleet in some place and attack. Now, let's say this kind of plan it can hack. Let me hack into the drone control over it. My point is, for something like a drone fleet, okay, which is powerful enough to challenge major powers of the world, AI will not be able to control that with the right cryptography, even though it's very intelligent.
So to recap, you see human society as having all these assets, and all the assets are so hard for superintelligent AI to take over. I have a very different view. I mean, when I look at
Hmm.
every single computing device, I say, okay, yeah, this computing device has 0-day vulnerabilities, and a superintelligence, if it materialized on a flash drive, would just waltz right in because it would see the 0 days because they're not that hard to see when you have massively superhuman coding ability.
No, I see that the things which are of absolute importance in a scenario where this is a war scenario you're painting, those things are actually very well defended. And the smaller vulnerabilities of individual devices that we're talking about, that attack vector, right? Can it reach those super things? So when we are coming too close to this world where this is a feasible thing, obviously this defensive have also caught up and they will not be vulnerable. That's my belief on this.
You're saying like, yeah, it'll get like a billion laptops, but when we have attack drones, those are going to have such good computer security that the AI is just not going to realistically be able to get into that drone.
Definitely the defense in security moves with the offense and vice versa. That definitely happens.
This does introduce a shift to your claim, though, because I gave you the hypothetical scenario of the alien drops a flash drive on the Earth, and now you're saying,
Yeah.
like, okay, yes, maybe if our pants are down today, the flash drive takes over and humanity's dead. But if I introduce the additional premise where the AI gets developed incrementally, then I'm
Okay.
confident that the
No, no,
incremental
no.
defenses that we build up will match the timeline.
Okay. So even in this first scenario where alien drops today, even today, I don't believe that there are enough vulnerabilities available to do something as drastic as human extinction. Okay. I don't think so. Maybe some accounts can be stolen. Maybe some, very sort of cringe side terrorist attacks can be done, where individuals are attacked. Maybe those things can happen. But a human extinction scale attack, I don't think can be surmounted by just a piece of intelligence without any control.
The kind of levers of power that I imagine is I actually think, first of all, it'll have a lot of humans on its side because we're always seeing on social media and just in the world, even before the internet, we're always seeing movements, right? Where like billions of humans or millions, right? They get into a particular religion, right? Christianity and Islam, they have billions of adherents, movements on social media, Donald Trump, Andrew Tate, right? All these, Brian Johnson is one type of movement, right? I mean, you've got all these movements constantly happening. Humans like to join movements. They like to be ideological. They like to shout at each other, left versus right. So to me, it doesn't seem like a difficult mental exercise for something with like a million IQ to be like, okay, well, here's my movement. I have a lot of people passionate for my movement. And also I have a lot of money, right? Because it has a million ways to make money. These are a lot of levers of power, right? You get a lot of humans as part of your movement. And also you can micromanage them. You can give them all exact orders. The way I see this playing out is the AI can just puppeteer things where before you know it, within a matter of months or less, now it's got like the power of a nation state because it's got all of these humans as part of its movement. Isn't that a reasonable starting point?
Okay, this is an excellent direction now. This is very close to my heart. So now you're talking about power of AI to coordinate humans. Basically, that's actually an attack vector which I'm really concerned about. This is the first attack vector, which is already happening, right? This is just turbocharging what's already happening. Direct coordination, right? The whole social media politics that uh, I don't know how old you are. I'm not that old either, but sort of I was not born into social media politics. Let me say that. And this is a shocker for me. It's power and it's somewhat liberating that in the sense that direct access. Why you have this permission system? I went to you know top universities. So I'm a creature of permission system. But I evolved my belief system at some point that let's imagine a world which is not like my world. My world is you go to a very permissioned university, a very permission, do everything best, top the exams, and then you have the credibility to do something. That's a permission world in which I grew and preached. I think things changed after social media. We are in a new world of permissionless. Everybody directly can influence everybody. They don't want any uh, sort of credibility from when previously existing system. They can start their own thing. In this world, there are many benefits. It's very liberating for a large population. People who had invisible doors in front of their university access, in the front of their fancy top job access, or other accesses. But there are benefits like that. The attack vector of that world is now people can have this kind of arbitrary coordination power, right? Which some people like Naval claim as this infinite leverage.
So remember, my question is just like, yeah, if the flash drive was dropped here today, right? Can it take over using movements?
Yeah. So my claim on that is that attack vector is real, but still limited. That movement which collects some people, let's say you collect people, but there is always an equal and more powerful counter to that movement the moment it starts threatening this thing. What will transpire out of it? I cannot wrap my head around that. This movement can happen and will happen. There will be AI coordinated politics and religions, no doubt about it. you we'll see that in the next 5 years.
Trump is an example of a recent movement that is a lot more powerful than many of us expected, right? Because like, the fact that Trump was able to like come back and win another election, at this point, everybody agrees, okay, Trump has a really strong movement, right? A lot of people are just pro-Trump. They're part of his movement. They're willing to accept a lot of guidance on what to think coming down from Trump. And I would argue that it's theoretically possible to have a movement that's even 10 times stickier than Trump, right?
So, barring the political beliefs, which because I won't want to discuss, I can discuss it also, but I don't want to. I don't think that's appropriate. What do you think about outcome of Trump as a president? Was it a democratic thing or not?
I mean, I think that there was an election. I think recently he won the U.S. election. So yes.
So I believe it was democratic. Sir. I believe it is natural progress. There was nothing wrong with it. I somehow you're insinuating that this happened and something worse can happen.
No, no, no. The only reason I brought up Trump is I'm just saying when an AI has the power to make a movement, Trump is already somebody whose movement picked up a large fraction of the United States. So imagine an AI using its brain the same way that Trump used his brain, right? But the AI is even better at doing what Trump's brain does, right? Because the human brain, it's just a machine, right? So the AI is doing the job of that machine, but better. And the job of that machine is to get a lot of humans going along with its plans.
No, but what I'm trying to say is that humans cannot be convinced at this scale to join a movement which will destroy humans. That's the main argument I'm going
Oh,
for.
got it, got
So
it.
Trump movement happened because its intent, his intent at the heart of it was something good for the US and most of the American beliefs. That's why he became the president.
If you look at all the societies that collapse, right, or like Germany descent into Nazism, all of these different movements, it's not because everybody who joined the movement at the beginning thought that they, recognized that where the movement was going, right? So it's one step at a time. Everybody's like, oh, I like Trump's energy. I like that he keeps it real. And some people think Trump is still good. I'm not saying Trump is necessarily going to descend into hell, but if you look at the movements that do, right, or like Fidel Castro and ruined Cuba, right, or like Argentina got ruined, like all these countries that get ruined, it's not like the people don't see it coming because it's just one step at a time.
Yeah, that's what progress is, right? When you do something disruptive, sometimes you succeed, sometimes you completely, that's a drastic move typically. And that's how progress is defined, right? It's different from the past. So you enter unknown territories. And when you enter unknown territories, then it's a matter of belief. Do you think trying unknown territories will take you to progress and better advance of humanity? Or do you think it's the collapse of humanity?
So to recap what we just said, so I was saying, imagine an AI from a flash drive. It's super intelligent. It's going to easily be able to manipulate millions or billions of humans into being part of its movement, where they listen to it and it pulls a lot of strings and it gets a lot of things done using humans as puppets.
Right.
And I was using the example of movements like Trump, where I'm like, look, you can have charismatic humans extrapolate, right? Extrapolate a more charismatic brain than the most charismatic humans brain. I believe that there's headroom above human charisma, and that was just part of my argument, saying the AI is going to manhandle the state of the earth. I have many such arguments. I think it's going to manhandle the state of the bits inside every computer, right? I think the AI is going to be incredibly powerful.
No. So that's what I'm trying to say, that the number billion may be correct, but no more. And it will
Okay.
not be enough. It will not be enough to have these kind of drastic endings for humanity. The counterbalance of this movement will
A
be there.
billion coordinated soldiers, right? It's a tightly
No,
coordinated, an
you
army
won't
of a
have a
billion
billion
tightly coordinated
coordinated
soldiers.
soldiers. I don't
Okay.
think this is how soft coordination works. Even the hardest of religions and sort of the most martial of religions cannot convert the whole following class into soldiers. It is still soft and it is still good life.
Imagine that Muhammad himself, right, or Jesus or Moses or whoever was in your DMs every day working on you personally, right? Imagine that the most powerful prophet is in everybody's ear, micro communicating, right? I mean, you got to extrapolate.
I'm extrapolating and I'm saying those numbers are still very small compared to what the counterbalance will come up. Basic notion of humans is to survive, right? And there are, because of whatever the way we are creative and the way we go in progress, there are attack vectors which come in, but those are small, especially in the coordination attack vector. That's what I'm saying. This is the attack vector I admit. It is one of the more dangerous attack vector. We have been seeing it over the last 20-25 years. This is the creature of internet and social media where, you know, some new world where you have extrapolated power of a charismatic leader, as you said. And this is a new word. But I think the power of that is the other side of it. It will always have the counter, and especially coordinating humans to destroy human at that scale. I don't buy that argument. I don't think it's possible.
Okay. So heading into the wrap up, there's a lot of steps we took that I'll do an attempt to recap and I'll try to describe your position. Have you ever heard of the ideological Turing test?
No, but I heard of Turing test.
Right. So my job, I see my job as I'm going to put forward the Himanshu position, and hopefully I'll describe it as well as you yourself could describe it, and then you can correct me if I don't achieve that.
Fun. Yeah, let's do it, man.
Right. That's basically the exercise. Okay. So your position is obviously you're for open source AI, and when you think about the danger of runaway super intelligent AI, and you think about how much headroom there is above the human race, you think there's probably a good amount of headroom, but not so much that an AI can just one day suddenly take over everybody's brain and take over every computer and suddenly, without warning, become incredibly powerful? You think that that scenario is far-fetched and it's more likely to just be a more incremental scenario, a lot like Robin Hanson talks about, where it's like, yeah, it'll just go at like a reasonable pace and there'll be attack and there'll be defense and it'll be the best equilibrium we can hope for. And so because of that, just keep all the AI open source. How's that?
Pretty good, pretty good. I mean, there are some other factual things I can add to it, but this is roughly what we discussed.
Nice. Okay, yeah. Anything else you want to add to the recap or something to, I don't know, something that you took from my view as part of your closing statement?
Yeah, I think it will be good to just mention this is the risk, but what's the, like, you're talking about the risk that is possible, and you're saying, in your view, the risk is doomsday, like humanity gets extinct by 2100.
I think the AI is going to get more powerful than us, and then it's going to steer the universe where it wants to go, and it will just drag us along, and we will no longer have any levers of control whatsoever. And this is all going to happen in, potentially just a few years.
In a sports, and like few years, like 5 years.
I mean, yeah, it could. I wouldn't be that shocked if it just happens in the next 2 years. I wouldn't be that shocked. I'd be a little shocked. I think it's more likely. I think 50 years would be plenty of time for this to happen. It would be weird if it doesn't happen in the next 50 years.
And what's the positive part of it? Like, why are people risking this is what I want to also maybe have one short discussion on, or whatever, one summary on.
Because humans are dumb. Simple as that, right? Humans do stuff all the time.
So you're no, my point is, are we building AI because humans are dumb?
Oh, I mean, we're building AI because it's technology, it's fun, right? I mean, and every incremental step that we do is useful, right? Like the next release from OpenAI, I love getting my hands on it. I'm like, oh, better images. But I can also see, it's like Icarus flying too close to the sun, right? It's like I love flying higher, but I also think we're about to crash and go to hell.
Okay, so I think it's more drastic than that. I think the positive change is much more drastic than that. I think it's one of the three major things that one can do to have human progress. For example, AI just gives us power to have more time. It's one of the most valuable resources humans have as a population. Right? If a population doesn't become interplanetary, then we need more time on this planet, each of us. And I think that's the part about AI which is very fascinating, where it's getting the menial jobs, which are of all kind, which have taken over our life, reducing, is a very important part of AI. And I think that part also excites me. It won't free us in the way that, oh, you have time and now you have all mental health problems are solved and everybody is happy, because happiness is, I don't think, is a virtue which most humans are after. But it will free us in a way as agriculture feed us to become what we are. And I think that's the possibility which excites me, that if I can move at the speed of my ideas, it will be so good. And that's the possibility I am actually looking forward to here. And I think many people are. I believe you are also.
Yes, I am also, and I even think that it might happen. I think it probably won't, but I think that it might, and I'm hopeful, just as you are. That's a great note to end on. So Himanshu, just want to repeat again, super brave of you to come into the arena and represent your views and field any question I ask you. These are obviously unedited questions. These weren't softball questions, and this is a very untraditional choice for a VC-funded, high-profile startup to just come in and do a Doom debate as part of their PR tour. So huge respect, man. Thanks for doing this, and best of luck to you and Sentient.
Thanks, Liron. It's fun.
Huge respect to Himanshu Tyagi. Even though he and I disagree on so many issues, he came in game to debate in good faith, following the standards of discourse, and I think we had a fun conversation and a good episode. If you've been enjoying this show and you haven't yet gone over to youtube.com/@doomdebates and smack that subscribe button, and then also gone to doomdebates.com and subscribe there via my Substack emails, why are you playing hard to get? Life is short. If you like somebody, you should subscribe to them. Hey, by the way, you know what's coming up on May 30th through June 1st? The Less Online Conference, like lesswrong.com, but a real life conference in Berkeley, California at a place called Lighthaven, which everybody says is this amazing conference space. I've been there a few times. I can confirm it is an amazing conference space. I think you guys should all check it out if you like the show, if you like Less Wrong, if you like Miri and Eliezer Yudkowsky. There's a lot of discussion there about that kind of stuff, as well as like rationality and just nerdiness in general. If you remember some of my recent guests on the show, like Jim Babcock from the Less Wrong team, or Professor David Duveneau from University of Toronto, those guys are coming to Less Online. So that's two guaranteed cool people that you can meet if you come. And also I'll be there. I'm on the website now, less.online, and the list of guests that they're highlighting is just ridiculously overpowered. Look at this: Scott Aronson, Scott Sumner, Scott Alexander, Eliezer Yudkowsky, Emmett Shear, Ayla, Patrick McKenzie, Tzvi Moshowitz, Kelsey Piper, David Friedman, David Chapman, Alexander Wales, David A. Dalrymple, Davidad, Dwarkesh Patel, Daniel Cucatello, finally learned to pronounce his name right, Andy Matushak, Michael Nielsen, Laura Deming, Joe Carl Smith. I mean, this is the who's who. This is like the Oscars. And also, I'll be there. And you know what's going to be the talk of the town at Less Online? The thing that everybody can't stop talking about? It's the new book from Miri. If everyone builds it, everyone dies. There's going to be a lot of conversation about how to get Miri's message out there. The critical message that I talked about last episode, literally, if anyone builds it, everyone dies. How do we move the conversation where it's not about like, oh, which safety technique is the most likely to work in the next 3 years, unrealistic timelines. It's more like, hey, how do we wake up to the fact that we're building something that's going to kill everybody very quickly and stop gaslighting ourselves that you can just work on safety on the same timeline as capabilities? How do we finally take some sane action, act like a sane species that doesn't want to just sleepwalk right into the whirling razor blades? I'm looking forward to a lot of good events and conversations around that theme. And remember, your help is actually pretty critical in all of this. If you haven't done so already, please go to ifanyonebuildsit.com. That's the book's website. Please pre-order it. If you pre-order it right now, that's the way to maximize how much impact you're going to have by pre-ordering it. That's the way to maximize the effect on the stats before the book publisher has to decide how big of a print run to do and how much to invest in marketing. Their goal is at least 10,000 pre-orders, ideally 20,000. I'm not sure how far along they are. I think they're going to give us an update, but I saw on Amazon that in a bunch of different categories, they're hitting #1. So I think they're doing okay, but every book counts. I mean, we need to blow this up. This needs to be like a phenomenon. This is kind of Miri's last best effort to try to turn the aircraft carrier that is public discourse. I'm obviously doing my part, being a little tugboat here on Doom Debates, but it only works if viewers at scale kind of understand the message and realize it's time to do their part, which means you. So again, that website is ifanyonebuildsit.com, and they now have an audiobook that you can pre-order. You can use your Audible credits. You can order a hardcover. I think they're saying don't wait for the paperback, which makes sense, but you can also buy a Kindle edition. Definitely check it out and maybe buy 2 or 3 copies to give out to your friends and family. Last thing for today, I want to play you a clip from the Lethal Intelligence Guide, my favorite animated explainer of AI Doom concepts by my friend Michael. Today's concept is about mechanistic interpretability. Basically, the myth that we can look inside of AI and understand what it's doing and control it via our mechanistic understanding. It's just not realistic. Michael's going to make the point that even understanding how today's AIs learn to add 2 numbers was ridiculously complicated. It was a huge breakthrough research paper, and it just scratches the surface of what these AIs are doing. My own analogy is, if you look at the human brain, neuroscientists have had plenty of time to start making theories about which chunks of neurons are doing what, and it's still quite confusing. And there may never actually be an answer that humans can understand. The best answer that we may ever get is just like, look, there's a lot of parameters. You just do a forward pass with a bunch of parameters interacting with each other, and you get an output, and the output has been tuned through this training process to do this deep kind of pattern matching, and that's it. If you want to know how the pattern works, you need a bigger brain. I can't just give you a human level explanation because your brain is small and you're not going to have a lot of short-term memory parameters that'll even let you understand my answer. Like, I can't explain to you how human language works. There's too many parameters. The answer is you just load in a ton of parameters. You take the entire science of linguistics over thousands of years, and the end state of that is what humans can already encode just by learning grammar as they grow up. And it's what AIs can already learn via deep learning. Like, as Jim Babcock pointed out on the show a couple weeks ago, if you want to write down all of the rules for human language, good luck. Maybe another few hundred years of linguistics will eventually get there. It's kind of chipping away at it. But the real answer is you just have the human brain vacuum it up using the human brain's version of deep learning. Or you have modern AIs vacuum it up. Like, modern AIs know subtle things about linguistics that our linguists don't know because they vacuumed it up. They understood it just by virtue of being really big. So this state of affairs contrasts with what they want you to believe about mechanistic interpretability. There's never going to be this outcome of like, oh yeah, we just understand how the gears are turning in the AI, and so we took a look and we can tell you that it's safe. It's just not going to work like that. The black box approach is probably ultimately all we have to work with, which is incredibly scary and dangerous and incredibly unlikely to work. Let me turn it over to Michael, and we'll see how he walks us through the same point about how AI is going to lack interpretability.
Deep learning and machine learning in general makes things quite difficult because of how the models are being built. Their creation feels quite similar to evolution by natural selection. At a basic level, machine learning works by selecting out essentially randomly generated minds from behavioral classes, a process taking place myriads of times during training. The model receives an input, generates an output based on its current configuration, and receives a thumbs up or thumbs down feedback. We don't really build it directly, and the way the mind of the AI grows is almost like a mystical process. And all the influence we assert is based on observations of behavior at the output. All the action is taking place on the outside. Its inner processings, its inner world, the actual algorithms it grows inside, it's all a complete black box. And they are bizarre and inhuman. Recently, scientists trained a tiny building block of modern AI to do modular addition, then spent weeks reverse engineering it, trying to figure out what it was actually doing. One of the only times in history someone has understood how a generated algorithm of a transformer model works. And this is the algorithm it had grown to basically add two numbers. Understanding the modern AI models is a major unsolved scientific problem, and the corresponding field of research has been named mechanistic interpretability. The implication of all this is that all we have to work with is observations of behavior of the AI during training, which typically is misleading, as we'll demonstrate in a moment, leads to wrong conclusions, and could very well in the future, with general AI, get deceitful.
Boom, another great clip from the Lethal Intelligence Guide. Head over to the show notes. There's a link that'll take you to the whole video. It's worth your time. Tons of nuggets of insight like the one you just saw. Thanks for watching. Thanks for being part of this journey. And I look forward to seeing you here next time on Doom Debates.